Hello, friends. I got a video for you today. We're going to talk about DeVon Franklin, who is the Senior Vice President of Production at Columbia Picture. Big name in Hollywood. Has been around the block. He was married to, I think her name was Megan. And I will stay away from their personal lives. I find that to be safer. I know that they're no longer together. And again, much could be said about that. I'm not going to go into his personal life, but this is a message where he spoke to Oprah, where Oprah learned the truth about the Sabbath, which is on Saturday on their show. Very interesting discussion here. Let's take a listen.
So what path or religion are you in your pursuit of perfection with God? What are you?
I was raised Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay, and what does that mean?
Seventh-day Adventist is a Christian denomination, and one of the things that we believe is observing the Sabbath. So from a young child, being brought up, I was always brought up with Sabbath observance. So Friday night sundown and Saturday night sundown, as mentioned in the Ten Commandments, remember the seventh day to keep it holy. And then also Jesus observed Sabbath as well.
Yeah.
So it's one day where I don't check my emails, I don't respond to work calls, I don't read
From
any script.
Friday night
sundown to Saturday night sundown.
Yeah.
No work.
You don't check your emails.
No.
That's
There's a function.
that's like against the commandment of Hollywood. That thou shalt
like
carry that
against the
BlackBerry at all
commandment of Hollywood.
times.
But you know what? Here's a good
Yes.
thing. When you set boundaries
Yeah. Yeah.
up front,
Up front.
here's what my commitment is. So we all agree.
I
before
love this,
we even take
DeVon.
the job or go
Yeah.
down the road,
Yeah.
here's the commitment.
Yeah.
Are we all agreeing this is okay? So then all I have to do is just make sure I keep the commitment.
Yeah.
Because the moment I break it
Yes.
is the moment they realize, oh, well, he wasn't that serious. But for me, Sabbath is a time to recharge. It's a time to rest. It's a time to spend time with my family. It's a time to spiritually reconnect.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
What is interesting is that you allow your faith,
Yeah.
your belief in God to be at the forefront of who you are in a place where most of us, and you even say in the book, I remember when I said to my father, I was like 13, 14, Dad, I'm going to be an actress. No daughter of mine is going to be going out to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, boy.
Sodom and
You
Gomorrah.
know the line.
Sodom
Yes.
and Gomorrah.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, right. So you're living in what a lot of certainly traditional Christian people see Hollywood as the land of everything but following the path of your faith. How do you make it out there?
Well, you make it by being true to yourself. And
Like literally for your first job. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt.
it's okay.
For your first job, working as an intern with
Yes.
Will Smith,
Yes.
you say to them,
Yeah.
look, I have to have the Sabbath
Yes.
off,
Yes.
which may I just confess that I learned in my first meeting with DeVon. All these years I thought the Sabbath was Sunday. I've been going to church. We say worship on the Sabbath, worship on the Sabbath in the Baptist church. And you corrected me. You said, no, Sunday is the first day of the week. Sabbath is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown.
That's right.
I stand corrected.
Amen.
So you go to your first job
Yeah.
with Will Smith
Yes.
and say, look, I'm really excited to be here, but
But-
I have to have Friday.
Friday night sundown, Saturday night sundown off. And what happened was
Weren't you scared to say that?
Yeah, I was scared. It wasn't
Like
intentional.
it wasn't intentional.
It wasn't intentional, but I'm there in the interview.
Yes.
And God starts to literally, it feels like he's speaking to me, because everything goes great. I feel like, okay, yeah, I got this in the bag. You know how you just go in and you land,
I
hey,
did
it's all
that.
good. But at the end of the interview, it was like God was saying, tell her about the Sabbath. And I'm like, no, I'll tell her after I get the internship.
After I get the
After
job,
I get what I want.
I'll tell them.
Right.
Yeah.
But he said, no, be obedient. And so I said, man, all right, well, here's the thing. I can't take this internship if I have to work Friday night sundown or Saturday night sundown because I observe the Sabbath. And she was quiet. And then after a moment, she said, don't worry, work around that. And I said, hallelujah. And what it did was
Wow.
it gave me confidence that if I embrace who I am,
Wow.
it will open doors, not shut them. Also,
That's really big. Hold that a moment. Pause. Tweet. Okay, good. Go ahead.
but also thinking about doors, right?
Yeah.
If your faith won't fit in the door that opens,
Yeah.
then I argue do not walk through that door. The door that God has
Whoa,
opened
boy, that's
for
a
you
moment.
will fit your faith.
That's such a tweet. I have to take a break.
All right. This is the interview. I mean, in this one, Oprah Winfrey learned a number of things. She didn't know the seventh-day Sabbath is not Sunday. She found out it was the Sabbath on Saturday. And also, from the time of this video, again, I do not know so much everything that there is to know about DeVon Franklin or where he is. And again, I will not go into his personal life. He stood on his conviction. And the reason I'm sharing this video is because there's been a number of things. The first thing I want to argue in favor of DeVon here, because there is this notion in Christianity, right? If anybody is in Hollywood of any sort, if anybody is part of anything that is in a culture or in the world, they automatically classify that person as either an apostate or a hypocrite or a non-Christian. I will say that notion is incorrect. I think there was a time I held a similar view, but the reason that is not correct is because of what Jesus says. Jesus himself put this text together, right? And he quotes. Jesus says in Matthew 5, he speaks about how the Christian ought to be the light of the world. Let me ask you a question. Where do you shine light? Where lights already are, or you shine light where darkness is? So if you say a Christian cannot go to Hollywood or be part of that system, I question why we're saying that, because yeah, the system, there's a lot of stuff there that I definitely have an issue with, but who's going to communicate the light of the gospel to them if God cannot put a Christian next to them? I don't agree with that either. So maybe you can say the person became a Christian while working at Hollywood. Most people will not come to Jesus without a friendship, without a relationship with a person who is a Christian. Very few people just wake up and have a dreams and become Christian. So I would say an argument for DeVon Franklin, for many of those who criticize DeVon for being part of Hollywood, I don't think it's a fair argument, because God is using him right where he is. And he might not be that holy and pious and sinless man, as some of us will assert, but at least pray for the man, give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's hope that God uses him. Rich people listen to rich people. Hollywood stars and movie stars will listen to people that are in that field. There might be a lot the Lord can do with him and for him and through him in that environment. I'll say it's best you pray and leave the results with God. And this is not to say you should go in Hollywood and do whatever these things are. I feel like a lot of people who go in there, they just lose themselves. You don't have a strong relationship with the Lord, this is not the place for you. And if you do and you know your calling, well, you should know whether or not God is calling you in this region or not. And again, there was a Daniel in Babylon. Daniel had a significant role to play. Yeah, somebody will say he was brought there not by choice. He was brought there because he was a slave. I get it. Nevertheless, God still had a Daniel in Babylon, right? There was an Esther in Babylon. So oftentimes God will put his people in very strange and difficult circumstances, or even environments that they themselves will not have chosen, so that the light of the truth and the gospel could spread. So I will say, remember that children of God are the light of the world. Just pray that the Lord will use them wherever they are. The second question is whether or not, regarding the 7-day Sabbath, I'm going to pull a document here that I have. All right. Let me share this argument. Let me share this document with you where it speaks about the Sabbath in a sense that I hope it will make sense to some of you. Because I've read your comments. I've listened to some of you that are talking against the 7th-day Sabbath. And for many of you, I realize one thing, though, and that's why I have to sympathize. I realize one thing. Some of you don't understand what God intended to do with the Sabbath. You know, all the argument for Sunday keeping is being refuted. You can try to use scriptures all you want, or historical accounts of any sorts. It's been refuted that Sunday is not the Sabbath. It never was, never will be. The resurrection is not an argument for Sunday keeping. The biblical Sabbath is on Saturday. People know that. DeVon knows that. Oprah knows that. And many others around the world. There are hundreds, over 565 different faith communities that are keeping Sabbath, by the way, on Saturday. So that is not even an argument anymore. But I think what I would like to share right now is God's original intent in Sabbath keeping, like why the Sabbath is so significant. And I wish not only people who keep Sunday will understand this, but I'm also wishing that even Sabbath keepers will understand what I'm about to share with you. It's not a big deal. Well, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal because a lot of time people are keeping Sabbath and they're keeping it, either keeping it on the wrong day, but they're keeping it not knowing the significance of it, right? Here's the thing. The Sabbath is especially related to the doctrine of God and how his presence is manifested in the Sabbath commandments. Now, I want you to remember this. The significance of the Sabbath is rooted in the fact that God's presence, I want to highlight this, God's presence is manifested in that day. That is crucial. Why is that? When you go to Genesis chapter 2, when you read Genesis chapter 2, and there's been some argument about that, it's not that difficult for me to understand. The Bible is very clear. When you go to Genesis chapter 2, it tells you, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. Let me see if I can explain this. After creation, after the creation week at the end, on the seventh day, God chose not to do any work of creation. He actually rested. What that means is he rested physically, and also in that rest, by him resting on the seventh day, the very presence of God manifested in the Sabbath rest made the day holy. I want to say that again. Is the presence of God manifested on the seventh day of the week, the Sabbath day, which made the day holy? That means you can't pick any other day you want, because God only did this on one day. And secondly, picking another day outside of God's day, Sunday or any other day of the week, is like saying you can make a day holy, which is impossible to do. So actually, that's an act of blasphemy. That's like you positioning yourself in God's prerogatives. In a sense, you saying that since God can make a 7-day Sabbath, I can too. That's blasphemy. Now, we're not going to push that argument too far. Going back to my document here, here's the thing I'm trying to say. There are different ways. Most arguments we hear about the Sabbath is atomism. The atomism argument is this micro lens kind of argument, getting into the final details and you missing the mark. I would like for you to look at the Sabbath from a holistic perspective, holism. The holism argument is a wide lens in a clear focus. You want to see the bigger picture. That's what you need to focus on. Look at the bigger picture, not the details. And when you get in the details, you get wrapped up in this spider web and you get confused. What is the significance of the Sabbath, right? What is in the heart of God? What is the intent that God had in mind from the very beginning? Now, the whole idea is rooted, listen to this, in God's presence. Actually, throughout the Bible, you will notice over and over again, everything that God does, where he inserts his presence, whether it is a place, a time, or human beings, the presence of that thing, the article, or that apartment, that place, becomes holy. The reason that is because God is holy, right? That's why God can say, be ye therefore holy, for I am holy. Because why? My presence is in you. So when you look deeper, the Sabbath is a completion of creative week. We know that. God rested on the Sabbath day. Therefore, here's the thing. Therefore, by him resting, He causeth the Sabbath to be holy. So it is the presence of God on the seventh day that made the seventh day Sabbath holy, sanctified, set apart, special, not like everybody else, any other. Now, God's presence in the Sabbath makes it holy. I know I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I wish people will get this. Like, if you get this, you get the key that unlocks the significance of the Sabbath. And once you get that key, don't ever lose the key. All right? Sunday keeping doesn't do that. It's not there. It's not scriptural. And also, the time in which God does this matters as well. That's why when people make an argument for the resurrection of Jesus for Sunday keeping, I'm like, what makes this significant is the fact God rested in the beginning of creation. That is huge. Now, if you're going to make an argument for the resurrection, it will still work in favor of the Sabbath because Jesus rested in the tomb on the Sabbath. So both cases, Sabbath keepers win. So anyway, keeping the Sabbath as holy is in reference to God's presence. That's what makes the Sabbath special. With regard to biblical concepts of holiness, scholars have pointed out that the divine realm of holiness permeates the dimension of the whole creation, which include sacred space, sanctuary, sacred persons like priests and Levites, sacred time, Sabbath rest, and many more. The burning bush. There's nothing holy about a bush on fire, but when the presence of God is in it, Moses had to take off his shoes. The sanctuary, it became a holy place. Unholy fires were not allowed in the sanctuary. People who were not ordained or set apart could not officiate in a sanctuary. There were certain outfits that were not welcome in the sanctuary or the tabernacle of meeting in Exodus 8, verse 5. So when you go through scripture, you will find this concept over and over again. The elements of the sanctuary were holy because they were sanctified. They were made holy by the presence of God. That's why when Nebuchadnezzar did what he did in Daniel chapter 5 by, not Nebuchadnezzar, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, which was Belshazzar. The sin of Belshazzar was the fact that he took that which was holy and he profaned it. And he knew it. He did it with the knowledge. That was the problem. So the priests themselves were holy. The Sabbath is also holy. What makes the Sabbath different is the fact that no other day of the week God invested and manifested and rested with his presence on that day. He did it in creation week. And you see throughout the Old Testament, Sabbath was kept. New Testament, Christ kept it. And also the apostles kept it. We have this argument already, so we're not going to go back to that. But the point of the matter is, friends, whenever the God of the Bible invests himself in something or a time, a space, a person, right? A movement that becomes sacred and holy and should be treated with respect. This is why the Sabbath commandment is like no other. So going back to what we heard here from Oprah, Oprah just had a piece of truth, a nugget of truth sent at her. Yes, the 7-day Sabbath is God's holy day, set apart. He manifested his presence. He rested. He blessed it. He sanctified it and made it holy. It is like no other. And he hands that over to the believer. He hands that to everyone who believes in Jesus and say, keep it that way. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Friends, it is a blessing. I'm telling you, my family, we are blessed because of the 7-day Sabbath. Now, we are blessed for many things, but one thing in particular is the seventh day Sabbath is a blessing to the home. And I'm learning more and more how to keep it holy, friends. I'm not telling you I've already arrived. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I'm holier than thou. What I'm saying is that on the seventh day, God did something special on that day that he did not do in any other day of the week. And that sets that day apart from all others. And he commands his creation, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all your work. But on the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. Like DeVon was saying, friends, there's some things you just don't do. The do's and the don'ts we can talk about. But why are the do's and the don'ts significant? Is because of the presence of God. Right? So what we do, what we don't do, that's another discussion. And if you want to know how to keep the Sabbath day holy, let me know. I'll make a video explaining that. Just ask me below. I'll share some things with you that we do and some things that we don't do. And we keeping the day holy can only be done on the seventh day because there's only one day that is holy. There's only one day God manifested his glory. Only one day where the presence of God has been invested. You cannot do this on any other day. And keeping the day holy blessings will come down for all those who do obey and listen. Read Isaiah 58, verses 18 downward. God tells you that. Thank you for listening, though. Like and subscribe to the page. If you happen to be new, click the bell icon for more. If you enjoyed this video, put your argument below, your agreements, disagreement below. We can have the conversation. I welcome that as well. Have a good one. Bye.